Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Rangers Review morning briefing for Wednesday, the 9th of August. It's game day, and what a game it is as Rangers begin their Champions League campaign in the third qualifying round. First leg clash against Servette at Ibrox this evening. I'm Derek Clark, and I'm joined this morning by Joshua Barry. How are we doing, Joshua?
Yeah, good, Derek. Looking forward to the game tonight. I think a big, obviously, chance for Rangers to try and really start their season. So, yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, we're looking for a reaction after the disappointment at the weekend. Of course, there was a press conference yesterday. Both clubs, both managers spoke to the assembled media, Michael Beale and John Lundstrom. Then we had the Servette coach at Ibrox yesterday evening, Rennie Wheeler. Is that? Hopefully that's how you pronounce it.
I'll trust you because I don't know.
He was up for the press as well, speaking about his side. A number of players missing for tonight's opponents. We'll touch on that shortly. But Joshua, just before we go into Michael Beale's press conference, what are you expecting tonight?
Yeah, I've got a couple of images I'm going to show as well of Servette and kind of what to expect from them, Derek. But I think, in short, there's a few things to consider. I think it's probably a more favourable tie than Genk. Having watched both the two legs. Genk, I think the expected goals ended up something like 6.5 to 2.4 or something in Genk's favour. Servette obviously had a man sent off in the second leg away from home after 4 minutes, which when you play 120 minutes, it's quite difficult to win a game of football at Champions League qualification level. And it was an important player sent off them. I think it's Crivella or Crivelli, it's pronounced.
Crivelli.
Striker.
Enzo Crivelli.
Yeah, who I think will be a big miss for them, and I think actually they're missing a few key players, which we'll get into, Derek. But I think you can't underestimate, in the same way that as we spoke earlier in the week, when teams come to Ibrox, they'll have to consider what it's like playing there and the unique aspect of that compared to maybe playing a different European side. As Michael Beale kind of spoke about in his press conference yesterday, I think that the fact that Servette have come through that game against all the odds, it will really fuel their belief, and I think that can play a factor in these type of games, and it's something to consider. But yeah, they're a direct team, quite aggressive. I've got a couple of images here. That first, they've got their pass network there from the game against Genk, and the thing to note here, don't get too worried about the names or necessarily the shape of the circles, but if you just look at kind of what rough formation they're in on the ball, the pass networks don't tell you that exclusively, but they show the average passing position of a player. And what you can see is they're almost attacking in a 4-2-4. In terms of key players, Antunes on the right, who is missing tonight, I think he'll be a big miss for them. Crivelli, you can see just off of Bedia, big target man, strong on his left side, scores a lot of goals for them. Kutesa on the left side is going to come in on his right foot, as opposed to Antunes on the right side, who's going to stay in his right foot. The fullbacks are there to kind of alleviate and create space for the front four, and the distribution is very direct. Again, Jeremy Frick, who's missing tonight, I think he'll be a miss for them as well in goals because of his ability to distribute over range. But what you'll kind of see is, if we take that into an actual game situation, Derek, this is the game against, I think this is against Genk as well. This is what they'll do a lot. You won't see them play through the midfield much at all. They've got two really important central midfielders, Dunin and Cognat. Cognat's going to play a bit higher. He's going to try and win second balls. The two fullbacks here, you can see, are pushing up a little bit, but even when there's not as much pressure on the ball, you're rarely going to see them try to play through the midfield. They're often going to try and get like 4 players, sometimes 5 players in the last line. And it's an interesting style of football you can see there, the 4 against 4, because watching their games, when they have a lot of possession, they don't always have loads of control, and you kind of think, well, how are they going to create chances? But I guess the risk-reward of this type of strategy is that if, for example, Antunes pulls the ball out of the sky, as he does in this example, you can so quickly create a 4 versus 4. You maybe pull an opposition, defensive midfielder back, because teams will rarely want to defend a 4 against 4. They want to defend with an extra man at centre half, and I think you might see that with Michael Beale's team selection tonight as well. So, yeah, they're a direct team. I think they've got a lot of really good engines in the team, especially in central midfield. It's all about, for me, their attack, trying to get the ball into the front 4, create those front line superiorities as quickly as possible. And I think it'll be quite a unique, different test compared to the type of sides that Rangers have played maybe in Europe over the last couple of years. When they press quite aggressively, but at times kind of sit off as well. So Depends how they play this tie, because they've got a sellout crowd for the first time in I don't know how many years. You were speaking on the members channel about that yesterday, I think. But again, that comes into it as well. So I'm sure they'll be trying to keep the tie as alive as possible. I'm sure Rangers will want to go over there with the leads. I think Rangers should have enough. I think that if they can't get past Servette, then they probably won't merit Champions League football as much as it will be a difficult test. And tonight, surely about trying to establish some sort of lead. If you want to read more about Servette, though, there's a scout report on the website which gives a little bit more detail, a few more graphs, if that is your type of thing.
Yeah, nice comment coming in here. Says, read over Josh's analysis of Servette this morning. Really interesting how they attack and miss out midfield. Very risk-reward. A lot like what Stevie was talking about yesterday. Yeah. Let's get to a few of the comments that are coming in. Loads of them. Interesting point. James Quinn raises here. If Servette come to play, we should win. If they sit in, we might find it difficult. I imagine they will be sitting in based on, I think that's how they'll set up, given that they're missing a number of key players through injury and suspension. So it will be up to Rangers to break them down. Ryan Stewart says, morning guys, can we have some positivity today, please? 3-0 to the good guys. I would absolutely bite your hand off for a 3-0 right now. I think it's going to be a stuffy game tonight. I think it's up to the Rangers playmakers to look to find ways in behind. James Skeen says they won't be used to playing in an atmosphere like Ibrox. They certainly won't be. When I was speaking to the Swiss journalist, which you can find on their YouTube channel, folks, he says it will be something unique for them. They've never encountered playing in front of 50,000 people before, and it was quite nice words he said on Rangers as well, how they're viewed in Switzerland. So they view this as a huge match for them. They expect Rangers to win, but that's not to discount Servette after what they achieved last week in defeating Genk, as Joshua says, coming and winning from behind, and then with 10 men as well to do so is no mean feat. So I think they're going to be well up for this night tonight. I just thought off the back of that, of course, the winners of this tie go on to play the winners of PSV and Sturm Graz. It very much looks like it will be PSV. Josh Sloan says, I watched PSV last night. They were very good. They were. I was at the Bolton game last night in the Carabao Cup, and we came in and watched Sky Sports, and the scoreline was coming in 4-1, and it was just thinking, that's tie over, Joshua, you'd imagine.
Yeah, just before we got into PSV, I just wanted to. That was a good point that someone raised about the risk reward there. You see here where the guy is at the base of midfield. I think one of the really interesting points tonight, if Servette do go for it, but if they do attack, the risk reward of them loading loads of players in the last line is mitigated by the areas they lose the ball. It should give you time to recover. But the Rangers at the weekend, they were perceived to have too many players in the middle, although, as Michael Beale was speaking about the press conference yesterday, I think it's more complex than that. They won a lot of games with the style of football that they played domestically last season. But I think this game might suit them because of the way that Servette play tonight and when they try to go direct in the space that they leave and turn in the middle. So it's going to be a really interesting game. I also think that Servette don't look great from defensive corners as well. But just as an aside, I think that risk-reward point is important. In terms of PSV, yeah, I'm always, I don't know about you, but I'm always absolutely opposed to facing a side 2 years in a row in the qualification setup if you've beaten them last time round, because it just adds something extra, doesn't it? I mean, Rangers were underdogs probably in that doubleheader last year. I think they would be again this year. PSV obviously won. I think they won the Super Cup against Ajax recently as well, didn't they? So yeah, I think that'll be a really difficult draw. As you say, that looks like it is what it's going to be. There's obviously strong rumours linking Malik Tillman to PSV as well. So it would just be a weird Matrix style reality if Rangers were to get through and play them over two legs. But again, I think any team you have to play in that playoff round is going to be really difficult to reach the Champions League, given the type of teams that you're going to play if you get into the competition proper. I don't know about you, but I don't like the idea of facing the same team 2 years now.
No, I remember it's very much, it reminds me of when Rangers played Parma 2 years in a row, once in the UEFA Cup back in 98-99. Went out, perhaps unfortunate to go out over there in Italy, and then we get drawn against them in the Champions League qualifiers the following season. I think at the time, folk were like, oh, not them again. But it led to one of the greatest nights that Ibrox has ever seen. And then they'd get the job finished off over in Parma. So yeah, it reminds me of that one. I think if they do get through, and listen, it's a big if, because I think this is going to be two massive games, hard fought games as well. Then they need to focus on that before focusing on what looks like PSV. Michael Beale conducted his press conference yesterday. A number of interesting points that were raised in that. He was asked on an issue of width. He was asked, do you need to, I'm just trying to find the point that he was asked about. Seeing here, does he, well, first of all, he was asked, does it, people have mentioned the lack of width in the team. Are you confident you have the options you need to make a success of this season? He said, listen, there are loads of coaches after a game you don't win. That's the business and the nature of being a football coach. You try to black that out and believe in what you're doing. The team played the same way and won a hell of a lot of games last season, scoring lots of goals. So when it's right, it's right. And when it's wrong, I get it. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion. I believe the way we play is fine. I just think we have to be more decisive. So I think that's fair to say, Joshua. I know a number of supporters feel quite alarmed, saying that this with some of the comments that he made yesterday about the style of play after what we witnessed at Rugby Park. Do you think he's quite right in what he said here?
Well, obviously it wasn't. If you're maybe speaking halfway through a season and you've lost a number of games and a number of performances have looked like that, maybe so. I think from Michael Beale's point of view, he'd probably look at that game at Rugby Park on the weekend and wouldn't suggest that was the best example of a football he wants to try and play, if you know what I mean. A number of players you'd imagine in the strongest 11 weren't starting at the weekend. Some key areas of the pitch, on the left side, for example, where I don't think the first choice player is playing, and that limits things. But where I think he is right, Derek, is that managers. Let's say Beale was to play with two wingers, and I don't think he really ever has. At times last season, he played with those wide profiles. It's Sakala and Matondo on the final day of the season. But I think you need to think what type of football he wants to play, what type of football he speaks about all the time. And let's take away stuff from the weekend. I listened to you and Stevie yesterday. I thought it was really good, talking about pace of play, all these intangibles, taking the handbrake off. And there's a lot to discuss around that. But on the topic of width, what Beale, I think, wants to do is he wants to play with these players in the pockets. He wants to play with players in close combination. He speaks a lot about relationships on the pitch, speaks a lot about giving players freedom in the final third. And that's why I think at times a lot of the time after he came into the club last season, a lot of football was very good. Even when he was playing without many options in the final third, obviously got those number of wins away from home and at home as well. Rangers, I don't think under Beale had loads of games where you thought they cannot break this team down. I'm struggling to think of many games where that was an example. Aberdeen away, they didn't score. They should have. It wasn't as if they didn't create any chances. I don't think there was many games like the weekend against Kilmarnock last season. So I think that's probably where Beale's opinion comes from. But yeah, at times last season, as we spoke about on Monday, you might have seen, for example, Todd Cantwell play more in wide areas when the centre was really blocked. And I think we used the 3-1 win over Hibs at the end of the season as an example of that. You saw Fashion Sakala at times give you that driving option from the left-hand side. The one area I think maybe some questions could be raised is, do Rangers have that profile of player in the final third who can receive the ball at feet and drive beyond players? I think Sam Lammers will give you that. We obviously didn't see that the weekend because he wasn't really on the ball. I think Seema's a different type of player. I think he's better off the right than he is off the left, and it's more about movement and behind, movement in the box, as opposed to running with the ball at his feet. But if Beale were to, example, go and play two wide wingers attached to the touchline at the weekend, you need a fullback who can move inside, which Barisic isn't going to do. Tavernier spent his whole career doing something else. And I think the way that Rangers use width is all about the way that they try and create space in the middle. Obviously, the weekend that didn't work. But again, I think what Beale was trying to say in his press conference yesterday, Derek, is that it did work last season. They need the time to work on the relationships to show a better example of that football. But the difficulty he's got is that that's in tension with the results that you need now. And that's why naturally there's that reaction after the game at the weekend, because there's just so little room for slip-ups in a title race, and also people want to see the examples of what's being worked on right at the start of the season. Saturday, Rangers weren't able to do that, and that's why I think as much as tonight being about getting a strong lead to take over to Switzerland, it's about putting on a better example of the type of football he wants to play, which I think is very based around getting the likes of Lammers and Cantwell on the ball. He wants players to play close together because he wants them to play in close combination. Yes, that's going to be difficult when teams flood the middle, but again, to go back to that point, I think they found lots of solutions to get around that last season, and I think he'll be confident that when his players get up to speed, they'll be able to do that again this season.
James Quinn says we need to give these new guys a chance. Probably won't see the best for a week or two. As long as we are winning, it won't be a problem. But Saturday's showing proves the level needs raised pronto. Can't disagree with much of that. Just some other interesting points from that press conference yesterday. He was asked, Michael Beale, was a game a bit of an eye-opener, the Kilmarnock game? Yes, it's a club of big highs and very big lows and not much in between. We know that. Listen, it was a disappointing result at the weekend. It's a place where, as a football club, we haven't always done well. At the weekend, possession-wise, we were quite comfortable, but I felt we lacked some directness and forward running in terms of our play. We will certainly want to improve on those aspects when we go back and play Kilmarnock. He was also asked, any alarm bells ringing? No real concerns. I see the group training every single day. I see the level of the players that we've brought in. The group needs to settle down a little bit with the amount of players coming in. There's no excuse on that. We train together every game. Every game we are a team. We need to go out and get positive results, and that game needs to be pushed to the back of our minds at the moment. We don't get anywhere dwelling on that. We need to play this game tomorrow night for what it is, a hugely important one. Absolutely is. Just on the issue of the width there, Ryan Stewart raised an interesting point. Says full-backs have generally been our width the last few years. They're both aging and can't do what they've done 3 years ago. That's the worry for me. Interesting point he raised there, Joshua. And just thank you for Stuart for correcting us. It wasn't Ajax, it was Feyenoord. Interesting spelling of Feyenoord there, right enough. But PSV beat Feyenoord in the Dutch Super Cup a little earlier on this month. Let's get to our potential lineups tonight, Joshua. Lots of comments coming in about who should start and what have you. Ian Edwards says, is there a chance that Fuentes could start? I've got him, my predicted lineup, which will be on the website shortly, folks. He starts for me, Joshua. I've also got a start for Danilo. Todd Cantwell comes back in. Just trying to think who else. If Dujon Sterling's fit, I would like to see him at left back. I'm not entirely sure that will be the case, so I think Bonner might get the nod with Ridvan out injured. Is there any other players you'd like to see get the nod tonight?
We're probably quite similar in the teams we want. I don't know what will actually unfold. Sterling, if he was fit, I'd play him. I guess there's two sides to that. One is that he's not played any competitive minutes. The other is that he obviously played in that final pre-season game and maybe was being kept on Saturday for this game on Wednesday. But I'd be surprised if he plays, if he's thrown in. But I'd quite like that. So Fuentes, similarly, I think you might see, talking back to the way that Servette play, which is direct, and they want to get 4 players in the front line. I think Beale will want to play an extra man in there quite a lot, I'd imagine. Depends. Maybe they will just really go for it and try and capitalise on that space in return. Intrigued to see what they do there. Obviously, in pre-season, you did see quite a lot. A Raskin at number 6 with 2, Cantwell and who was it? Cantwell and Hadji one game. Dowell and Cantwell in another. Those 2 profiles of number 8s who are perhaps more offensive next to them. I would like to see that tonight. Cifuentes, I'd like to see play football soon. Similarly with Danilo, and Beale will know that. You give yourself a bit of grace, I think, by getting these signings in, because although Rangers did have a lot of new signings involved on Saturday, there's only 5 in the starting 11, so 9 have come in so far. I don't think all 9 are going to play from the off, but we'd like to see Cifuentes in there if possible. Cantwell has to come back in. Does a Cantwell, Cifuentes and Raskin midfield work? Does it have enough balance? I don't know. When you look into the front 3, for me, it's got to be Lammers at number 10. Didn't have an effective game at the weekend. I think this game will be much more suited to him. And probably 2 strikers in the last line, one of which has to be Danilo. The question is, who do you play next to him? Because I don't think Dessers looked fully ready for the game at the weekend. Don't think he looked as sharp as he will look, hopefully. Sima is, again, someone who's not totally convinced yet. I think he looks better off the right side than he does off the left side.
Yep.
But all depends what type of game Beale expects as well, because if it is about attacking the box and trying to break Servette down, maybe it'll more be Danilo and Dessers. If it's more about, if there's going to be more space on offer, maybe Sima comes in to play that role. But I'm in total agreement with you, Derek. I'd like to see Danilo in there as soon as possible, definitely starting tonight.
Yeah. I think my team, I've got taking away the back four. I think that the midfield, Dill, Cifuentes and Raskin with Cantwell just playing in behind. I've got just playing in front of them. Lammers just playing off Danilo. Wasn't entirely too impressed with Serial Dessers. I think he will contribute this season, but I don't think he's reached the sort of match sharpness that he'd want himself to be on Saturday. Of course, we've got the nuances of going to Kilmarnock and the artificial pitch and Scottish football that was looked to be a bit of a surprise to many of the new signings. But yeah, I'd like to see Danilo definitely has to start for me. Would like to see Lammers just playing off him with Cantwell behind them, trying to pull the strings, if you like. Midfield is huge tonight because that is Servette's strongest area of the pitch. So Rangers really need to come out on top in that area if they want to take a lead over to Geneva. Really looking forward to the game, though. European nights at Ibrox, Joshua, there's something else. I know that the Champions League group stage campaign was a sobering experience last season. We don't want to go over old ground and look back at that too much, but it's important that he was asked about it, the financial impact of qualifying for the Champions League, of course, as well. Just this game, though, the £5 million payment, I think, is huge.
Of course, yeah. I mean, getting into the group stage is so significant, and I think making a habit of it is so significant. Obviously, in a different situation when Beale was working under Gerrard's Rangers, made a good habit of qualifying for what was the Europa League at that stage until the Malmo game a couple of summers ago. Tonight is so significant because, again, to go back to that point, if Rangers can do well over this couple of legs, because Livingston at home, yes, if you go and put on a good performance and a good result, then maybe you start to see a little bit more from the new signings. But that's not a game that the expectation on that game is that you win, and you win comfortably, right? So it's hard to maybe raise expectations too much out of a game like that. A Champions League qualifier is different because if you go and do put on a really convincing performance, whether it be taking a good lead over there, whether it be putting on a good defensive performance in Switzerland after you've put on a good attacking performance in Scotland, I think can raise expectations somewhat. And obviously group stage European football is confirmed, but I think getting Champions League would be so significant for so many reasons. Also means you wouldn't really be playing catch up as much as well, because Celtic obviously guaranteed in the Champions League. Yeah. Otherwise, you'd be playing Thursday, Sunday, and I don't think that's a bonus over the course of the season. So I guess the positive for Rangers as well is that they are pretty much fully fit as a squad, or there and thereabouts. I know there's a few injuries, but if you look at the strongest starting 11, there's not too many people missing. Would expect it to be the same defence tonight. Still think that, Beale was speaking in the press conference about, actually, if you look at the net spend, what Rangers will have spent so far this summer, it's not going to be too significant. Maybe, hopefully, that leans into securing another player at the back to give that little bit extra depth. But I wouldn't expect too many changes in the defence tonight, purely because with Ridvan being out and Davies has been out, Balogun would presume that he's only cover at the moment, although with Goldson only meant to have been playing 60 minutes of the weekend, maybe that impacts things. But yeah, you'd hope that after that leads to a little bit more reinforcement in that area and taking the summer signings up to double digits.
Yeah, well, just off the back of that, Origami Dinosaur says, any chance some of that Sakala money will be spent in defence? I think some money would have been spent in defence anyway, Joshua. I think that is an area of the pitch Rangers need to strengthen, especially after the weekend. There has been talk, of course, of a left-sided centre-back. I think that is more apparent after what we witnessed at Rugby Park. Do you foresee a bit of reinforcements in the back line, do you reckon?
Yeah, well, first on Sakala, because I wasn't in yesterday, I saw you and Stevie paying touching tributes to him, but I thought it was a great message you left with. Sakala, I think it's a good example of how a transfer should work, because for me, although there'll be a lot of revisionism, is that the word? Is that the phrase? In a game after the weekend, and say he could have changed that, and he did have good numbers last season. I think there was a lot of games last season where people were saying that's an area of the pitch you need to upgrade. So I think he leaves at the right time, probably for the right amount of money, that Rangers will be able to hopefully reinvest. Someone who did bring a lot of numbers, and there is maybe an argument that in some capacity in the front areas you need to replace a profile that has pace. You've obviously got someone like Rabbi Matonda who's still there, but just really hasn't done it at all, hasn't demonstrated anything to show yet that you'll be someone who can be counted on throughout the course of the season. So maybe another incoming in the front six, depends on an outgoing, but a lot of players have already arrived there. You still to see the likes of Cifuentes, and you're still to see the best out of that front three, the four players that have arrived in that area. I think defence is the one area of the pitch, Derek, where you could argue that Rangers need a little bit more of an upgrade. Obviously, the predominant transfer business has been in the front six so far this summer. And I think I was listening to, can't remember where I was listening to this, but if you look at the number of goals Rangers conceded compared to scored last season, the difference between themselves and Celtic wasn't huge. At one end of the pitch, it was in the front end. They didn't score enough goals whatsoever. So the argument that they need another defender maybe isn't backed up too much by the number of goals they conceded last season. But if you look at the mistakes that cost them in certain Old Firm games, if you look at the profile of player that they still don't quite have in the defence, I still think that they need a left-footed defender who's maybe a powerful player who's able to step into midfield against the ball as well as with it.
Yeah.
And you look again at the type of game that Rangers face at the weekend, they are going to have a lot of these away from home where it's about physicality and it's about dominating in the air. So if you're being greedy, I think you want one more player in that area. Although this time last season, Rangers got into the Champions League and we were speaking about another signing coming in, and it never happened, did it? It was a slow deadline day. So maybe one to keep an eye on. But this season, that might be different, I guess, because Beale has referenced that he said one or two before Cifuentes came in. Wouldn't be overly surprised if that's something he looks at, especially if they get into the Champions League.
Yeah, we need a Helander clone without the injury record, please. Would be absolutely ideal. Yeah, just on Sakala, of course, he's joined the Saudi club Al Fayha. Yeah, I think that's how you pronounce it. I do apologise to any Al Fayha supporters who are tuning in. But yeah, he posted pictures of him in the strip. Nice looking strip, nice colours also. So looking forward to seeing how he gets on over in Saudi Arabia this season. Right, folks, that'll do us there. Lots of content coming your way on the channel. Of course, Joshua will be at Ibrox this evening, where we hope that Rangers can take one foot into the Champions League playoff round when they take on Servette this evening. We'll have all the pre-match videos and post-match reaction as well, so keep your eyes peeled for that. We'll be back again tomorrow, hopefully looking back on a resounding Rangers victory. But until then, enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. Bye for now.